5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Darling, it's the Shy Life podcast.
Yes, well, it's a positive thing, Paul. The high life, the shy life.
You won't find a cast of characters like this everywhere.
Hello, Paul.
Delicious.
This particular episode of The Shy Life is a little more abstract than usual.
Oh, yippee.
Okay, looks like the hairy guy is ready to record. 3, 2, 1.
Go Shy Yeti.
Oh, I hope he hasn't found out my secret. Do you think he has?
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Shy Life podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti. How are you doing? I'm all right. Now, we've got Nick back again.
Hello.
Hi Nick, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Well, if I gave you a word, what would you say? No,
give you a word.
We're going to be doing we're going to
It's only
be doing,
words and words. No, they...
we're back to do another word association episode, or I guess we can call them that. It's
I might as well, yes.
How we associate with
They
them.
are quite literally word association, aren't they? So it's not like a sack just couch where you're. Now, what does this word make you think of? Sex.
Was that Property's brother?
Yes, Property's brother. He went into psychiatry.
Careful what you wish for. I'll be recording him back again. So listeners, we're going to run the theme music, and when we come back, we'll have some more words for you. We'll some harsh words.
We'll have words with you.
Well, they might be harsh words. We literally don't know. Let's run that theme music.
It's time for my old buddy, old pal from across the channel, across the pond. Paul Chandler, the Shy Yeti.
He's not that shy. Oh, it's the Shy Life podcast. Yeah.
All I wanted was a pie.
And then I hatched out of an egg. Okay, bring the mic over. He's ready to record.
It's the quiet ones you've got to watch, you know.
Is it metaphorical? Is it deep? Is it deep?
Boy, he's not all that shy, is right.
Blimey, Governor. It's the Shy Life podcast.
If you thought that was bad, just listen to this.
Oh, I can't wait for it to begin.
It's the Shy Life podcast.
He's positively glowing.
Hello, and we're back again. Okay, well, we might as well start as we mean to go on and select our first word. We're mainly going to do single words, I think, because I think that worked best last time. But we might sort of do a 2 or 3 at the end of the show.
So let's get the balls spinning.
Yes, yeah. The first word. The first word is berry, and it's spelt Berry, not as in burying or something.
Right.
Berry.
I see.
Like a
yes,
raspberry or
not
strawberry
with another R.
Yes. Yes, berry. Berry. Yes.
Well.
Do you
yes.
Do you have something, or do you want me to
start? 2 things. Quite simple, really. Strawberry and raspberry are 2 of my favourite fruity flavours, and my go-to jams, I must admit. I've always liked raspberry, and so particularly raspberry. Raspberry's just got the edge. It's just got a little bit more bite than strawberry. And the other thing is the Christmas Carol, The Holly and the Ivy. The holly bears a berry as red as any blood. I thought, kind of, what would they? Here, look, there's the blood. Kind of. It's interesting. It's a very vivid image. But I suppose with that, the thing I always associate that with is the Festival of 9 Lessons and Carols, which my dad used to tape, and then I sort of carried on the tradition. But there's always a line which they hurry, and it took me years to work out what they were singing. The singing, the sweet singing in the choir. It's a very strange jammed up kind of rendition. The playing of the merry organ, they're playing off. They're very all of us, kind of bounces. It sort of almost like concertinas itself up, and then goes all around singing in the choir. That's a bit of a loose connection, but yeah, berries. I think immediately of that carol.
Don't you have some sort of either allergy or sensitivity to certain fruits?
Me?
Am I right? Yes. I thought certain fruits you tended to avoid because they.
No, I just think they're horrible. No, actually, you're quite right. Actually, melons, I'm not brilliant with. Yes, certain fruits I think bring my lip up a bit. I think melons. I think are one of the culprits, and I don't think they taste very nice. But I think most of the time I'm okay with fruit. I don't have a lot of time for avocados, but I think they're more veg. Are they vegetable or fruit avocado?
I don't know. They're called avocado fruits, but I don't know whether they are really fruits.
They probably are a fruit, but they're
used as a savoury thing rather than a sweet thing.
I mean, Ali has in her time been savvy enough to disguise them enough, or sort of to cook them inventively enough to. Put them inventively enough in things to make them palatable, but I never get. There was a time in my when I went to see my godmother about 1988, and she served herself avocados, and they were revolting. It was like rubber slime, like you can get from a joke shop. They were disgusting. Maybe they were. The avocado was having an off day, but it was revolting.
They do ripen quite quickly, so you can either get them. Sometimes you can get them they're too hard, or they're too soft, or I mean, Toby tends to prepare them in such a way, like as a sort of breakfast thing with toast or little cherry tomatoes, and it's lovely. But I think it's probably knowing how to prepare it. But my associations with berries would probably be in one of them. I'm not 100% sure whether I guess they are a type of berry, but I'll start with the earlier memory. For years, I associate blackberries as being something that you harvest, I don't know, something like October or definitely autumn, because I have a memory of my mum and maybe my gran and I picking blackberries, probably somewhere in Buckinghamshire, on some sort of common, but it could well be that I associated with autumn because it just happened to be a bit of an autumnal or overcast day. But I believe that blackberries actually come out more like August time, or sort of they're much more summer fruit than an autumn fruit.
I think you might be right. Actually, I've got it. I don't know on what basis I think you might be right, but I think you might be right. Yeah.
I always tend to be surprised when I see them. As an adult, I've seen them sort of out far earlier than I associate them being out. But I mean, obviously, some of these things take a long time. That they take quite a while to grow and ripen. But even so, we wouldn't have been picking them unless they were ready. But and my other association is I have a memory in the last 10 years of picking, initially elderflowers, and then you make you can make elderflowers into things from the you can make cordial from the flowers, but then you can also make things a few months later if all the flowers haven't been picked. then you get some nice sort of small little elderberries, I suppose they're called. And you can make like elderberry gin, I think, things like that from them, or again different sort of cordial. So those are the sort of two memories I have associated with berries.
I never went berry picking like a lot of kids did. I think I was always afraid of getting stung or bitten or scratched. Or there was, I suppose. There's one, I don't even know if there was actually one memory I seem to associate with berry picking or something like. I'm not even sure if it's a genuine article, but I was very young, and I remember seeing a ladybird on immediately in front of me, and being convinced it bit me. And I think, and Mum always says that it was a stinging nettle that I associated, and she was probably right. But I was actually convinced this ladybird bit me, and I seem to associate that amongst berries and things. So,
I mean, between Salisbury and my parents' village, there was certainly a few fields that we used for strawberry picking.
Yeah.
But whether I actually went strawberry picking, I really can't. I imagine, as much as the strawberries are nice, being on your hands and knees
Yeah.
because strawberry bushes I mean, even raspberry bushes are bigger than strawberries. Strawberries are very much on the ground. I can't imagine it being very pleasurable. So I don't know that I'd have. I may have done it, as a one-off at some point, but I really can't remember now. My parents had like strawberries and raspberries in their garden, so I suppose I might have picked them from my own parents' garden. But
I always remember my mum had always raspberries and black. I think she might have had some blackberries too, but raspberries and strawberries in the garden, and she would pick them and we'd have them for pudding. And she would always say, "Oh, these were growing in the garden about half an hour ago." And I don't know if she was actually boasting how fresh they were, or trying to put me on a guilt trip that they won't go home to mummy and daddy. They were growing in the garden an hour ago, and you've killed them. But also, there's I think quite a lot of blackberry bushes on my way. I walk up the hill on my way to work every morning, and there's quite a few blackberry bushes there. You want to eat them because they're probably polluted to high heaven.
Well, that's the thing. A lot go to waste. Although I guess they hopefully don't go to waste because hopefully at least the birds will have them.
Well, yes. I mean, there's one bush up there which is a constant it's alive with constant chittering of birds. I know there must be a sort of it's the bird Piccadilly Circus in there. Every time you go past it, it's twitching like mad.
Let's move on to another word. Let's see what we come up with next. Next word it's a four-letter word.
Oh. Beep 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 beep.
No, it's sale. SALE.
Ah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that my dad was a estate agent and chartered surveyor, so he would be a profession that tends to get a lot of bad press. Although, in the days my dad was an estate agent, it was probably a little bit more, a little less controversial, or a little all this gazumping, and I think there was a lot more, or you'd like to think, or particularly, my dad's always being a churchgoer. I think it would very much go against that him to be dishonest. But it was. I think the words like gazumping and all that sort of thing came in more as he was kind of leaving the business.
Yeah.
But he had offices in Salisbury for the estate agents that he worked for, and I guess sort of one of the nearest I had to a summer job, other than being a paperboy, would be going to help at my dad's office, whether that be with photocopying and getting a little bit of payment, and the excitement of going off to buy a pot noodle for your lunch, or and then when I was unemployed after university for about 9 months, and I was applying for things, my dad was. He either left the estate agent or he'd moved because he did have his own business, but I think he also worked for a company at one point who would want him to go to big country houses to sort of to do what he'd done in his other business. But the business he had himself was a relocation agent. So say somebody in Australia would contact him and say, I'm looking for he'd only do the work in the Wiltshire or Hampshire area probably, or maybe Dorset, but there would be a sort of area. But if somebody was wanting to move to that area, they would give him the details, and he would go and have a look around in that area for potential things, or he'd go and speak. He'd be their front man and go and ask the estate agents, "Have you got anything like this? My client wants this," and I would often hop in the car, and he'd be like heading for Dorset or something, or heading for Winchester, and he'd drop me off in the morning, and it was during the time I was doing Sutton Park, and I'd be able to I'd better wander around Winchester with my camera doing Sutton Park, exploring bits of Winchester I hadn't been to before, because there's quite a lot of countryside. I do particularly remember in 90, I think this is probably actually when I was, because I was unemployed twice, once after university, then I had a 6-month job, and then I was unemployed for a couple of months waiting for another job to start, which was the job that brought me to where I live now, or at least to the area where I live now. And it was around the time that the Doctor Who TV movie came out in 96.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember that's when I was dropped off in Winchester one day, and there's quite a lot of...
I think I might have been with you. Or was that Guildford? No, it was Guildford. That round about the TV movie time, I was... You and I went to Guildford, I think. That was February, I think. It was a bit earlier.
Yeah, that was probably when I was doing the interviews for the job I eventually got. But yeah, Winchester has quite a lot of countryside around it, and you and I did some filming in Winchester and went to some of those, walked out sort of outside of Winchester and recorded. Yeah. But it was nice to kind of, better hop in the car with my dad and be dropped off at a location and then be picked up again and taken home. It was
absolutely. What more could you ask for? Was that the episode where I remember doing an episode with you in somewhere like Winchester, a big cathedral? And there was something who fell down a drain or something, and I had a really over the top cliffhanger where I looked at the camera and said, "He's left his video camera. He must be dead." we creased.
I feel like
it was a really penny dreadful clip.
I feel like it was Winchester that we did the very pathetic assassination plot lines, but that might not be right. But
I think that was Crystal Palace, wasn't it? There was Lee and.
I felt like it was something that you and I came up with, unless we did a sequel. Or you might be right. I mean, it's been a long time, and there's so many episodes I still haven't re-seen yet. But anyway, as you've said before, it's a little bit of a stretch from the word sail. But yeah, as my dad's profession was as a salesman of houses, that actually brought some perks for me as well. So, what about you?
Oh, sail, actually, when you said about it, sail, the immediate thing that comes to mind, I haven't actually thought about it in isolation for years, and that's sail in Cheshire, which is where my best friend in the 70s, pretty well my best friend in the 70s, David Buxton, moved to in 1977. He and I were best buds, and I hated losing him. Even though it's one of those things, when you're 8 years old, you fall in and out of friends. But that's probably just as much my fault than his. But I associate Sale in Cheshire with where he went in 77, and subsequent letters over the following years, where we kind of perpetuated this fantasy that we were both aliens from another planet, and we kind of had liaises, and he would sell me all these cruises and things, especially after he'd seen Star Wars. I just remember associate Sale also with his letter paper at the time, which was very Star Wars, which had I think it had C-3PO, R2-D2 and a stormtrooper pointing a gun at you. So I always think of his letters as having that in it. But yeah, that is the immediate thing with Sale is the place. I suppose also Sale of the Century. Again, going back to the 70s of Nicholas Parsons on Friday nights, just before the New Avengers. Series 1 of the New Avengers, it's the quiz of the week, and I remember getting excited about that. Not because of the program; I probably wouldn't have watched the program had it not sort of preceded the New Avengers. But I do remember getting quite excited. Oh, there's New Avengers in an hour.
But then I think when I think about our early friendship, to me, you were a salesman because you were working in a newsagent's, and I would come to your shop to buy things, and also to have a natter.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think I wouldn't have thought of myself in quite so grand terms. For me, as a salesman, is you're kind of flash Harry, sort of, you won't regret buying this one, my darling. Yeah, totally 100%. Yeah, kind of with the gear and and going door to door. I did. So I saw myself very much as I suppose I saw myself as a stockroom assistant, because shop assistant sounds very kind of down market and kind of looking at nails, and I was stockroom assistant. I did specialise in looking after the stock upstairs, but I don't think at any point it was. My boss, even though he was only 3 years older than me, used to call me his stockroom lad, as if I was sort of 6 years old. But yeah, I did miss sales. The trouble with sales is these days, because I talk to patients rather than customers, and at least with patients you are talking about their quality of life. It's very serious and very fundamental. Whereas back then, you had to knock yourself out to get them to buy a packet of crisps with this packet of crisps because it's this week's offer, and your heart wasn't in it really, because you think, well, would I want that? But also, I was never terribly. I mean, one of the things that made me, it was just the pushiness of that kind of thing that made me think, right, I've had enough now. Is when I'd already started my office job at the hospital, and I was just staying on to Index whilst I was. So I was actually working 6 days a week. I was doing my Saturday job left over from college at Index, and Monday to Friday at the hospital. And I was only staying at Index out of loyalty, and also it's a little bit extra dosh. But I think it was because they had these Index extra books, which was basically all the stuff you could order. Could you order it online? Either online, or we could order it directly through the shop. And they always told you to push these books. Now, people don't mind being given a book, but people do mind having to write their name and address and telephone number down with each one. And we had Index extra bonus, where if you gave away these books and managed to get these numbers, you got a little extra something, and it was just a little something in your wage packet. And there was one Saturday. I'd been with the hospital a couple of months, and on the board was saying, you're not doing enough for these things. Well, I thought, well, they're only supposed to be an extra bonus in your kind of thing. And I thought, cobblers to this. I'm too old for this now. And it was that kind of artificial pushiness that I just thought, no, I can't be arsed with this now. And in the June of '99, I gave it up for good. I thought, I'm in office work now. I've been much happier with office work. So,
a friend of mine who worked in a record store much more recently was always saying how embarrassing it was to have to sort of. You're buying, I don't know, a slasher movie, and can I interest you in these Disney films, or which is just this, whatever the standard thing is. Oh, if you buy this for another £3, you can have this.
Have a nice in with Bambi and the Burning.
It's all right, yeah. I mean, it's all right if you're buying something like that, but sometimes it seems really inappropriate to ask somebody who's buying like an Anthrax CD, and are you interested in this Will Young greatest hits? Like, well, clearly not. That's quite unlikely. And meanwhile, it's all right because in this particular example, the boss was round the back harassing some of the female staff rather than being the ones to actually have to put up with having to ask the embarrassing questions to the customers.
Well, it was always the case, isn't it? A certain Mr. McNeely, who I trust is not listening to this podcast, but he rather fancied himself as a ladies' man, and it was a whingy sort of. He was like a whingy older brother. And I worked with him for 10 years. I can't believe I worked with him for 10 years. But we managed to kick along and professionally for 10 years, but I always felt he was a little bit patronising.
I do find it quite difficult, the older I get, to respect people who are senior who are younger than me, or the same. When often you see them making the same mistakes as you made 10 years ago, or whatever, you think, I don't have any faith in you running this department, because I can see all the mistakes you're making. I did that 10 years ago and made the same mistakes, and now I'm supposed to be respecting you.
I'm lucky in that respect, because my immediate boss is 16 years younger than me, but she's sets a nice tone, and she's very kind of progressive and kind of let's all be professional, but she's not artificial with it. She talks about having a good drink, and she's a good boss. But I'm at the age now where I'm way too old to worry about people. Everybody's younger than me, above me. So apart from, I think one of the supervisors is about 3 years older than me. But I know I don't have a problem with age in terms of the experience, because all those kids know a lot more than I ever did. So
I think it's because
in my own experience, I think because I've never held a senior position. I've always avoided a senior position.
I think it's because I think of myself as working in a library, which I do.
Yeah.
And the library staff, the small amount of library staff I have, I'm kind of turned to because I've been there the longest. But it's the people who then manage above that who have no knowledge of libraries.
Yeah,
absolutely. They have no experience and they have nothing to add at all. As far as and they don't turn to us and ask us, what do you think about this? And yet they want to make decisions, and you think, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's when that brick wall of people who not or also haven't got experience in the field and aren't willing to learn. If there's a bit of my job that my boss doesn't understand, she will ask me about it and ask to talk it through and learn. That's all you need. A little humility from the people at the top, just to acknowledge that you might know just a little bit about an aspect of the job that they don't.
The trouble is they pay lip service to it, and they might say in some public meeting with the whole college there, if you've got anything to say, please, But nobody wants to be the one to stand up and go. If it's a hard conversation, nobody thinks it's going to go well if you tell somebody 2 grades above you that they're making a total pig's ear of something, and also doing it in front of the whole college. You wouldn't want to do it if it was just you and them, and you don't, and you certainly don't want to do it in front of all of your peers. Who it would be fine if they then turned around and agreed with you, but you know that they'll be too scared to. So it's all sort of. It's difficult to know where to turn with some of these places, because they show. I know from experience of other friends who've said they ask you to give. Bosses often ask you to give them criticism, and then when you do, they don't like it.
They don't like it.
So
it's a very difficult thing to ask people to give you criticism. It's not as easy. People who say that, do they really know what they're letting themselves in for? So, I think where the wheels fall off with my job is more the wider issues of the technical stuff. The packages that you're working with. We've got we've recently moved to Windows 10. I'm not knocking Windows 10, but it's changed the nature of our emails, and the whole demographics and everything has become much more clunkier and more difficult and awkward and difficult to look at, and the emails go one on top of the other, so you might miss some vital bits of information unless you read the whole thread, because they don't do them individually. They don't appear individually. They sort of and the subject matter at the top might not always resemble what it originally was meant to be.
I think it's the Peter principle that says that people get they get promoted to the level of incompetence, promoted to the level of incompetency because they're good at what they did at that grade. Then they get put up to a job where they're really struggling and aren't good anymore. I think that's what the Peter principle is. And you see it time and time again.
I would be no good with very barnstorming, angry consultants. I always like to have my consultants on the side, and also the idea of having to pull people in and pull them up over a job and everything like that. That's not me at all. So I've always stayed with what I know I can do. I know that's not very progressive, but I'm not ambitious.
No, me too. I mean, I've been at the same grade for 25 years, but that's partly because the next grade up, I've seen the people really being treated quite badly or struggling or not being particularly happy. And what makes me laugh is that I would still get a staff report that says, oh yes, Paul is probably soon to be capable of going to the next grade. And I'm thinking... Such stock phrases. I was getting comments like that 23 years ago.
I was getting comments like that at school.
Yeah, I was getting comments that I was ready for promotion 22 years ago, but I didn't want to go to promotion because of people like you.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I know that also on a completely different level, some of our consultants at work, not so much in the specialities I'm working with now, but former specialities I worked with, they were happy-go-lucky registrars and they were all staff grades, and as soon as they get promoted to consultants, the ego suddenly goes up 10 notches and they start demanding things. And I know at least one surgeon who could have, easily could have been promoted. I've seen him work. He's absolutely outstanding, but he doesn't want to become a consultant. I think, I believe from what he's saying, because he's seen what it does to other people. And he's stayed at staff grade, and I respect that.
I know so many people who have stayed by choice, and the trouble is, businesses like to use promotion as the stick to kind of make you work harder because they expect that you're hoping to go to the next grade. But actually, the difference in pay between grades is often very little. My boss doesn't get paid a lot more than she used to when she was on the same grade as me, and yet her amount of work and stress has tripled. I would have thought.
Precisely,
she isn't a horrible person. She doesn't like to get involved with it. She's quite. I think librarians are generally quite. My experience have generally been quite nice, quite quiet, mild-mannered people. They don't want to get into confrontation. Certainly not in the libraries that I work in. So to have people come in and sort of start inferring that you should be like some sort of, you should work in a library and be like some sort of city businessman, high commitment and sort of, it's just it's not library. It's not what libraries are about.
My sort of ambition is to polish what I am now and make it as good as it is, good as it can be. Also, in the position I am in now, I've got the flexibility to be able to help people that I wouldn't be able to help if I got promoted to supervisor. Similarly, my experience of people openly kind of not pushing me, but kind of pointing me towards promotion have not been terribly good, because when I was at Four Boys, we had stock takers. One of the stock takers took me out to lunch and said, "You ought to be a stock taker." I thought, well, I don't know about that. And I went out for the stock taker job, and I even had was allowed a calculator for the interview. Didn't get it. Me and Nath just don't get on. We never have done. So I was thinking that was really sweet of him, but it was a completely silly idea. It's also more recently, we're talking about 12, 13 years ago, when I was working in plastic surgery, my boss at the time said, I think you ought to go for assistant boss, basically, have a go at the, applying for being my deputy, as it were, she was almost saying. So I did, and I didn't make the interview thing because you didn't have any management experience. I thought, well, why did you put me up for it in the first place? It was a total waste of time.
But you won't. That's a stupid excuse. You won't get experience until you're given the chance to get it. I mean, it's bizarre.
Ironically, on that occasion, the carrot on a stick that was being waved at me was I'd be doing less work because at the time I was booking the minor operations, I was preparing the notes, I was doing this, I was doing that, and I took on oral surgery, and I really was kind of days. You really didn't stop, but. So in actual fact, that was. But no, I think somebody about 3 or 4 years ago did say, sort of that. I think they were having a supervisor reshuffle, or somebody left, or something, and they said, "Do you want to do it? And do you want to go?" Well, I'm surprised you didn't go for it. So it's a lot more hassle for what actually didn't amount to very much more than what I was on anyway.
I mean, I always flinch slightly, and apologies to any listeners who are more career-minded, but I always flinch when I hear people they start a conversation when they're not actually necessarily in work with questions of, so how's business, or how's because I tend to think, well, that's sort of my dad is always asking, oh, how's if I mention I talk to you, he'll be, oh, how's his job, like will be the first thing, it'll always be the first question, whereas it would never be the question I would ask it. I mean, you and I might mention work if there is something that particularly we want to get off our chest, but not in a sort of, not in a. It just feels very business. It feels very impersonal. I don't know. I just my work isn't
what you ask at a very posh party, isn't it?
I mean, I like that my job is a librarian because I think that's kind of a cool job to or a title to have. But I don't go on about it. Well, I might do but not in a sort of not in a businessy way, I hope.
No, I like my job, and I'm quite prepared to go on with it, until even after retirement age. So because admin suits me down to the ground. I dearly wish I'd gone into it earlier. I think I was too long in retail. Going back to sale, I was too long in retail. I actually, as a sort of fantasy thing, I go back and sort of what I should have done. It's sort of I put the pieces in a different order and say, no, what I should have done was do. I don't regret my experience in retail, but I should have quit late 80s, early 90s. I think.
I think I just sort of shiver at the idea that work might be something that defines me or something. I would rather be defined as a Doctor Who fan or a TV or a fan of vintage TV than what my job was. Even though, as I say, my job is it's a quite good job to say you do, because people are usually quite interested when you or at least they kind of, even if they have a sort of stereotypical, oh right, you stamp books all day, or some stereotypical librarian thing.
You got a fine. But no, I think I like my job because it brings in I'm able to bring to it certain things that I don't know whether they're skills or obsessions, but it's there are certain times when I go, I have a day off and I'm doing much the same as I do when I'm working, apart from the fact that it has no actual context within sort of patients or the NHS. But I have to say also, I've been 22 years with the NHS and I'm still keen to carry on. But when I talk to people like, we got an appraisal and I'm due for an increment. Now, I'm long past increment stage, having been there nearly well over 22 years. So, it's kind of, and I don't feel, I wish I could write. I feel, well, actually, I don't have to. That's something I don't have to aim for anymore. It's I'm quite happy with what I've got, and I'm actually quite relieved I don't have that kind of. You can go up to this bit.
I think in the same way as when we talked about essays, and I said I had a bit of a sort of phobia towards them, having to do them so much. There was a point where I could have done, and I probably still could, become a chartered librarian, which used to mean I've tried different, I've tried different versions of it. Sometimes you're supposed to have a mentor, but then that person leaves, and you're supposed to keep it like a work. But I mean, I think that what constitutes you becoming becoming chartered has constantly changed anyway over the years, and also the civil service didn't actually really recognise chartership. If you work for like a university and you become chartered, I think it affects your pay. I think in the civil service it may have changed now, but for a long time it meant it was just something to do to say you'd done it. And I remember saying to my boss when Lulu became an option, I said, I've been struggling to try and do this the last 10 years, and I've never really got the working in a small library, you don't get the time, although I think you're supposed to. I think there was a point where when I was trying to do it, where I actually said to my boss, look, you're supposed to get an afternoon a week to work on your chartership, and that was sort of, I was given that time, but I left soon afterwards anyway. But I think when I realised I could self-publish, I said to my boss, the chances of me even if I only sell a few books, I'll be getting more money from selling a few books than I will from doing this chartership report, so I'm going to focus on my writing. And she was, I don't think, even though she was my boss, I don't think she was chartered, so she shows that, it wasn't like she was somebody who could say, well, I did it and this is why you should do it. She hadn't done it either. So I think we should probably move on to another word, because we've really
exhausted sale. Right, we really sold on that one.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see what we get next. We've got another 4-letter word, and I think these 4-letter words sometimes they we can. Well, I guess we can move on quickly if we don't want to talk about it for very long. But some of these 4-letter words are so small that it's difficult to say. You could take it to mean so many things, like sale. So our next word is fact, which I think almost is too broad to discuss.
One thing I can say, the facts of life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we all know what the facts of life are, but when I was a kid, everybody was talking about the facts of life. They even mentioned it on George and Mildred. And, I remember Mr. Formichael, the next door neighbour, saying very stuffily, kind of, I didn't know the facts of life until I was 16. I thought, at the time, I was only about 8. I was like, right, I have got to learn the facts of life before I'm 16, because it's obviously terribly embarrassing to not know them by the time you're 16. So, right, that was a benchmark. Now, I thought that the facts of life were, I didn't realise they were sex. So I thought, why don't just people say sex? And I assumed they were basically a huge dusty folder that every household has, which tells you how the sun was made, how the universe was made, what God's first name is, basically everything you need to know about the planet. Sort of, I think by the time, when we did sex education, this is the facts of life. Oh, right. Why didn't they just say sex and where babies come from? Facts of life. What sort of a word is that? I mean, I remember being actually rather, it's the only time that's been disappointed by sex. And I thought, oh, right, it's just that. I was expecting something very much more admin based.
I mean, this is the trouble when they, my parents never sat down and told me the facts of life, but I went through puberty quite early, and things were happening, and I didn't know what was going on, and I had to literally find a science book at school to find out what was going on, and then by the time about 2 or 3 years later, when probably the other end of the scale of people, because a lot of people it's not something that happens at the same time for people. And I was at an all-boys school. I don't know if it'd be different if it was, because obviously girls go through changes at different times as well. But, and often you presume that their mothers talk to them about the things that are happening to them, but it doesn't happen like that for boys. And I remember by the time we had some sort of lesson at school. By the time I was at the grammar school, so I was 13 or 14, and that was 2 or 3 years too late, and it was almost embarrassing to have to sort of, it's kind of like, I know about all this. I went through this about 3 years ago, thanks very much. Nobody was there nobody was there to help me then. So.
I also, both, I say this with the greatest fondness, both our sets of parents were quite old-fashioned. And so I know there was never any question that I would be sat down and I think I am convinced, we will never know, but I'm convinced that my father was taught the facts of life by my mum. I don't think he certainly had literally Victorian Methodist.
Wasn't there that very old book? Wasn't there a very old book in your house about something like that?
I'm going to be quite candid now. It was when I became sexually active, and I think my mum, bless her, was, because my sister had a baby at the age of 18, and she was married at the time, but it was a shotgun wedding, and I think it caused a lot of unrest in the family. And I was actually sexually active at the time, and Mum she didn't want to sit me down and lecture me, but she did something essentially worse, and that she dug out this book from the 1950s, which was very judgmental about certain kind of aspects of sex, and very kind of Mr. Chumley Warner about the whole thing. And and it was ancient cover. It was one of these books that's so old it didn't even have a cover. It was just blood. And she left it in my room. Now, when you're nearly 25, that's a bit much. So and unfortunately, because Keith was coming around all the time. So this book, heaven knows how it was smuggled in, but yes, it was actually smuggled onto the set of Prison in the Sun. And there is an outtake. There is a bit on the footage where they open it up and do a scan on it, which was most embarrassing. But the first time I ever actually had the whole procreation thing explained to me was, I think probably I was under 10 at the time, but so I didn't really get any kind of emotional significance, anything, the fact that you could enjoy it. But it was a schools and colleges program. I think I was probably ill at the time or on holiday. Schools and colleges program about sex education, and this sort of kind of, I always remember the voice of the man was like, sounded like Father Abraham from the Smurfs. And he said, "Oh, how you have the penis? Yes, I did penis." And then I thought, the sexual act without any kind of sexual build-up or any kind of sort of feeling of excitement or anything sounds bizarre when it's described. And I thought, why on earth would people want to do that? And it's only when this is pre-hormones. But I mean, yeah. So I didn't. I think, did I realise that was how baby was? Because I was convinced at the time that I didn't realise, I didn't get the man's involvement at all. I just thought women became pregnant at a certain age, and the babies just developed. And then I thought, hang on a minute, how is someone a father? They're just a father because they're married to that person. But I just thought they magically. And I thought all babies came through cesarean. I didn't actually realise they were actually expelled through any kind of sexual organ. It's good about it.
I remember when my mum was pregnant with my brother, somebody sort of saying to me, "Oh, your mum's pregnant, isn't she?" And I'm not sure that it really been discussed, or I'm not even sure if I'd been. I can't remember. I remember whatever my reaction was, kind of, sort of. you're not sure what to say to that person when they said that.
Yes. I mean, it's similar. Similarly, certainly nobody told me when my sister got pregnant and had to marry very quickly. I've told the story many times, but the January, I remember sort of watching a Desmond Bagley thriller on the telly and waiting for that Saturday's episode of Doctor Who to be trailered, and I noticed that all the grown-ups were. And sort of Jen was grown up by then, but they were all in the dining room. And you remember our house at number 7 Kent Road. I was in the front room, they were in the dining room, and the door was shut, and everybody was in looking terribly serious. And I didn't know what on earth was going on, and I'm amazed I didn't ask either. I wouldn't have gotten a response, that's for sure. And it was. The next morning, the topic of conversation went right over me. That nobody addressed me directly, and they were all talking about preparing a wedding. I said, whoa, hang on a minute, is somebody getting married then? And sure enough, it was our Jen, and of course she'd been going out with Paul for a wee while. So, but yes, it was very cheap and it was very quick, and I get into my head that she was. Part of her dress was made from a net curtain, but I don't think that's true. I think it's because we had net curtains up at the time, and I'd never seen them before, and I wouldn't say I was fascinated with them, but I was kind of the novel. They looked a bit like a wedding dress, and I remember her being fitted up in the front room. But I remember the first time it was never mentioned to me that she was pregnant, and I remember her coming around that summer. Where she must have been only a few weeks, if that, due with our Sarah, and looking at Jen and thinking, "Is that the dress, or are you pregnant?" And of course, I didn't know anything about durations of baby, how long they took. So yes, it was only years later when I stopped and did the maths. I thought,
even though my parents, I don't know. 10, 15 years younger than yours, they still have that same sort of, what's behind closed doors remains within the family. I mean, when my brother got married overseas, and it was all very sort of. And when I sort of mentioned that I probably told you or Harry or Callum, my mum was sort of like, "Oh, why do you have to share?" I'm like, "What? You think I'm not going to tell my mates what Graham did? They remember Graham when he was like 5 years old. Of course, I'm going to tell them."
I don't see the reason not to tell them. It's a fact that they got married.
If you make something a shameful thing, then it becomes a shameful thing.
Yes,
if it's something. And if it's something that's not actually shameful, it's not like, he got and killed somebody or something. It's something quite innocent, like getting married, even if it was not against, not against their wishes, but behind their backs, whatever. It's like, so what?
But I spoke many times with my mum about it over the years, and it's implied that my dad it was of course very. Conservative in his ways and quite strict. It's implied that he sort of put the fear of God into my brother-in-law, because I remember Paul at the time being very clever and a bit cocky, and my mum said he certainly wasn't cocky that night, I tell you. Yes, there was a lot of. I didn't grow up in a particularly. Progressive kind of thing because of what happened to Jen was I wasn't lectured at all. I was never lectured, but I think they were a bit worried that history was repeating itself. But again, I was 24 at the time.
Your mum was a lot more, say, cool about. Yeah. Very liberal about it, or she was always very kind to me.
Yes,
I was out to her.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's not really discussed but it's not discussed in our family. But I could be out to your mum.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, she was. I mean, she had, like me. She was a contradictory being. She was part of the Women's Union Women's Institute. She had the starchiest and conservative of mates, but yet she. in the 1950s working for the ICI when she was in Mayfair, if she was bored of a lunch hour, she would time prostitutes in the where she could see down in Mayfair Park, and rather than reporting the police or anything, getting them moved on, she timed them and saw if the people got value for money. He didn't have very long this today, did she? It must have been on a meter, sort of. Yeah. But no, I mean, she was delightful like that because she was super liberal, because I think, I was, in terms of churching wise, I think she was a little bit appalled by my conservativeness in terms of the churching. Ironically, the churching she brought me up on. So, I mean, she watched Top of the Pops to its demise, which I'd given up on it years before. So she was cool, but it wasn't quite. She didn't really have the support, I suppose. A little bit unfair saying support, but she didn't really have the kind of infrastructure to be able to sit me down and say, "Now, son, I'm going to tell you the facts of life." And she wasn't that pompous. She could never have been that pompous either. So I think, and also most of the after that schools program in the 70s, most of it came from the very early 80s when I was at Highbury, and of course, we talked about sex all the time because we were starting to get sort of at the beginning giggly and later on we like this, and you got the jokey bits and the bits where they were serious interest in, and you had to join the dots up and make of it what you will. But yes, it was, and then you discover, then you go your own way, obviously, after that. But yes, so some of the bits that didn't really make sense on that schools program, emotionally, you kind of got it by the end of your schooling. But it's a very inhibited system. I don't know what it's like now for kids. I think they probably get told too much.
Hello, listeners. It is me, Cuthbert the Robot. Paul and Nick are just taking a quick break, so I am pleased to be able to share with you a pre-recorded chitter-chat with an old friend of the show. It is Paul's mum, and she has stories about her garden, and some of it relates to the fruit-based discussions that Paul and Nick were having earlier. I hope you enjoy what she has to say. After that, we will return to the guys for a couple more words before the end of the show.
Hello, Mum, it's me, Paul. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. A bit fed up with this cold spring weather we're having. What about you?
Yeah. I want to go and hibernate again under the duvet, but there's a big grey and white cat under there, so I can't.
Well, you mustn't disturb him. He needs to
He doesn't like me. He doesn't like that I'm going back to work. He gets very cross.
Yeah. I miss not being able to say hello to him.
Yeah. No, he's too busy sleeping here. He may emerge when we're talking. You never know.
Rattle the food dish. He'll come.
So, one of the last times we talked, you were telling us about your garden when it was sort of before, like, the end of winter into early spring, but things must have changed a lot since January.
Yes, we've had the yellow from the daffodils all round, and now it's gone to its blue stage because we've got lots and lots of bluebells. They've been here. They were just here. We've never planted any bluebells, and they just spread each year. We've got bluebells, quite a lot of white bells, and a few pink bells as well. And the perfume from them is quite amazing, particularly if it's the sun comes out after some rain. And we've got lilac as well, which is coming out now, so that's always good perfume. And also we've got a sort of, well, I think it's called a winter honeysuckle. But that is perfumed as well, and that doesn't really. That's out, just coming out now. it's been held back, I think, by the cold frosts that we've had, because it's delayed everything. We've got two camellias which are just finishing now, but in some gardens the camellias come out in June, in the end of January, February, but ours have only just come out now. They sort of, the buds have been there, and I sort of go every day and look to see if they've moved, but we've had about 10 days or so without a frost now, so they decided that it was safe to appear.
The
lily of the valley is coming out as well, and that's another perfumed flower.
Do you have many the trees? Did you get blossom on those? Are they is it still there? Or?
Yes, we've had the cherry tree, but that was spoilt by wind and rain. That's the trouble. Their blossoms are so fragile that you get some wind and rain and it soon. Plus that's the same with the acacia trees. Next door people have got a big acacia tree, and we've got one at the top of the garden which has lovely white flowers, and that again is perfumed, but it didn't last very long because of the bad weather. And we've got a big May. Well, you see May in the hedgerows, or hawthorn. That's where you get the hips and haws from in the autumn. But we've got one which hasn't been cut, and now it's gone up like a column and is as tall as the house, I suppose. And that's getting covered in the white May blossom. And that again is perfumed.
And what about the vegetables? Are you growing anything this year?
Yes, we've got potatoes coming up. We've got radish. We've got lots of garlic and onions. They're doing okay. What else we got? We've got a few cabbage plants that the gardener put in for me, because your dad won't eat it. And he's got broad beans, and there's quite a few things again which haven't come up because they've been waiting for the rain, because we hardly had any rain in April, and also for it to get warmer. I've got umpteen seed boxes around which I'm waiting for runner beans to appear, and sweet corn, cucumbers, courgettes. I've got lots of pots of fuchsias because I went and double ordered some plug plants of fuchsias. So I've got about 45 hardy fuchsias. So if you want one for your garden, you're welcome.
I've got a big enough garden. But what about the stink plant? Is that coming out?
That's starting to come up now. I think it comes out up about June time to actually flower, if you can call it a flower. But yes, last year it didn't flower. It sent up about 6 big shoots and began to flower. But then I think again we had some bad weather and rain, and they bashed it to the ground virtually. We've lost our yucca, which is some people it prospers, but it never did in our garden particularly. It has bell-shaped flowers on a stem, white, and you used to flower really about every other year, but I think it's turned up its toes and died on us, I'm afraid. But we've had it quite a long time. And all these plants, I mean, like the mountain ash that we have and the larch, we've had them about 30 years, and they start to look their age, as we all do.
And there's still the what's it called? The yew tree in the churchyard.
Yes, that's going strong.
And that's overshadowed by our other big tree.
That mountain ash, yes, that's very large. I look every year and hoping it's not got the ash dieback, which the ash trees have been getting over here. Because if that gets the ash dieback, that's going to cost us a lot of money to chop down.
I mean, that's always, that's always been very big, hasn't it? I never remember that. I don't remember that ever being small.
Yeah, it's quite big when we came. I don't know what the lifetime of ash is. We've got a small oak, which sort of seeded itself in the garden, and we planted it to make an oak tree, but that is very slow growing. And I'm watching it because there's the old saying is, if the oak's out before the ash, you get a splash. If you get the ash coming out before the oak, you get a soak. That's I'm supposed to tell you what the summer you can expect. Not that it's true, but still.
And I mean, is there anything?
I don't think it's either of them are showing much. I think, if anything, the ash might be leading. Now, we've got a field at the back which is absolutely brilliant. Well, it's gone to a citron yellow now. It was a pale lemon because it's got the rapeseed in it this year, and that's lasted a long time. So it's gone from lemon to primrose yellow and a bit yellower, and now it really is a deep yellow colour. But it'll soon get to the nasty stage where it starts going a brownie and doesn't smell very nice.
Oh, is that
it should be good for the insects.
Is that when? Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was quite smelly, but I didn't realise it was only smelly at a certain stage.
Well, it's quite a pleasant scent. In fact, some people get, if you were down here with your pollen allergy, whatever, that might have affected you, because some people it makes them runny-eyed and everything, but I mean it doesn't affect us, which is a good thing, as we've got this enormous field of it just behind us. They don't come and knock on our door. Anybody allergic,
Is there anything in the next couple of months that you're looking forward to in the garden that isn't yet sort of showing itself? Do you still have the raspberries or strawberries or anything, or is that all gone now?
Oh yeah, yes, we've got raspberries and strawberries. The blackcurrant, we had 3 bushes and they seem to be on their way out, I'm afraid. They don't seem very happy. I think we've had so much extremes of really dry weather last spring, and then we had really wet weather, and they just can't cope with it, and cold as well. So I don't know whether to get a few more blackcurrant bushes, because we do like blackcurrant jam, which is what I do with most of the fruit of the blackcurrants.
The strawberries and then stuff, is that?
Yeah, they're in brilliant flower now.
Oh, right,
yes.
okay, yeah.
Yes, the wisteria. That's a nice plant with the lilac pendulous flowers. That is starting to come out again. I think that's held back because of the weather. So I'm looking forward to that. But the roses will be the next thing. And we've got 5 more new roses planted alongside the driveway. So from the kitchen, you sort of look down the drive and they'll hopefully, they're only small, but they will sort of put on quite a nice show. And we've got all the roses along the fence at the front.
Are there still brambles enough for you to be able to pick blackberries without leaving the garden?
Yes, loads of those. They seem to do well. So we ended up by putting them out for the villagers in our recycling telephone box, giving them to neighbours. And
Nick and I were recording some episodes where we got the computer to choose random words, and then we said stories or anything that we could think of associated with those words that that might trigger a memory that we'd forgotten. And one way or another, we were talking about blackberries, and I said how I always thought that I was associating blackberries with autumn, but now I know that it can't have been. I think my main memory of picking blackberries, well, I'm not sure where we were, but I think I remember like you, me and Grandma picking some blackberries somewhere in Buckinghamshire on some common or something. I don't know if you'd remember where that would have been. I guess the reason that I think it was autumn might have just been that it was an overcast day or something. But,
Well, the blackberries, depending on the weather conditions, can start being able to pick them fairly soon into August, same time as the plums. And that's another, we've got the apple tree, which the apple tree, that one's ready in October, but the blackberries can start about middle of August. I should think, I can't remember exactly, but there was the big common, still is the big common. I don't think they built on it, Pen Common. I know somebody that lives on Pen Common, not personally. I think it's Jan Lehman, who
newsreader.
She was a newsreader, and she's having a little bit of a quarrel at the moment because she had the idea for a panel game years ago, which she put to the BBC. I think this is right, and they dismissed it. Now she says that they are doing virtually the game that she suggested, but of course she hasn't. She's inferring that they stole her ideas from about 20 odd years ago. But anyway, that is by the by. You see how our minds are a bit like a labyrinth, aren't they? They take different paths. You just don't know where you're going. What to do with me when I go into a maze, anyway.
Oh, so it might have been Pen Common we were picking those blackberries.
Yes, going back to that, yes. But there was Tyler's Green had a common as well. The two adjoining villages, but I don't think that one had blackberries on it so much. I think it was. I don't really remember Graham or Dad being around, so unless they were kicking a football somewhere, or it was that one or couple of times or whatever that you and I went up and stayed in that caravan. Yes,
next door. So it might have been they weren't about even.
Used to get harebells. They used to grow wild up on the common there. A pretty little flower with a little bluebell. We used to call them harebells. I don't know why really, except the stems were very, very thin. I don't know whether that's why they're called that, but it's spelled Hare bell. So.
The last thing I was going to ask you this time was, do we still have gooseberries or rhubarb, or have they gone because Dad doesn't like them?
They've gone. Well,
I'm going to call Childline. I'm calling Childline. Mental torture.
Those years I'd picked gooseberries, and they're not the easiest things to pick because they have really nasty spines and got pricked and scratched. And I did it for years, and then after about 20 years, he says, I don't really like gooseberries much. So I said, right, that's out then. But we did have some put in the recycling telephone box one year, and nobody took them, so I couldn't let them spoil. So I did make a bit of jam, which was okay. Well, he ate it anyway. Believe it or not, there's a funny little story about the rhubarb, because no, he doesn't like rhubarb. He never has liked rhubarb, so we got rid of that ages ago. But then, what did he come home with the other day from the co-op? A tin of rhubarb, which I couldn't quite understand. But we haven't eaten it yet, so whether...
Maybe he bought it to scare away the birds. He thought they would dislike it as much as he does.
So, so I don't know whether to make a rhubarb crumble with it or have rhubarb and custard like the television programme. That's
Oh.
going back a few years too. Rhubarb and custard.
Yeah. And talking to a TV program involving a cat, and still haven't seen my cat, so apologies for your rude, or my rude.
Yes, I expect to have a greeting next time that we meet up. Anyway.
Oh, well, thank you for talking about the garden, and we'll have another update soon.
Yes.
When things have moved on a bit further.
Yes, you take care.
Yeah.
Bye then.
Well, bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, well, let's move on to another word. Ooh. Some of these words are really, I mean, but I just kind of like, you see them and I think, I don't know what I'm going to say. Anyway, we haven't been completely stumped by anything so far.
No.
The word is surface. Like the surface of the sun, the surface of the... It's a funny one.
Yeah. Do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, but I have to think for a moment. Okay, well, I guess it is a surface, and it has come up as one of the first things I can think of. When we moved into our house in 1975 that had been built, my parents, it had been built on wasteland, so my dad had presumably designed it, etc., or I don't know if it was him and somebody else, or I don't really know. I was only very young, but as you know, Nick, as you come into and I'm not quite sure why it is like that. Really, I guess maybe it was the style of the time. But as you enter through the front door, and then as you come up to the stairs, there's like bare bricks.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, they're actually bricks that aren't, and the rest of the house is white plaster or whatever. But that particular bit up to the stairs is bricks. I mean, I must ask my mum sometime why was that just a thing, a 70s thing. But anyway,
I have to say, I'm a huge fan of your parents' place because I've filmed there so many times. But I have to say, I think that actually looks really good. It gives it a country look, but also quite a solid look. And
I don't think it looks bad. I just don't know why it's like that. But other than it being that's how we do that, or maybe they'd seen it on another house and liked it. But they might even have lived in a house that was like that before, because they've been married for 10 years or so by the time I was born, or getting on for 10 years, and. Anyway, somewhere between about 1975 and 76, I drew on that wall with crayons.
Oh, we've all been there.
And I think my mum has talked about this actually. I think she said she didn't have the heart to really tell me off badly because I didn't really realise that I was doing anything. I was only 3 or something. I didn't necessarily realise I was doing something wrong. But yes, I guess that is a surface that I encountered. I can't really think of anything else immediately.
I must admit, I drew. There are 2 bits of vandalism I can remember doing when I was a kid. One, I drew a little sun on the wall. Now, you might draw it on a piece of paper that's important to Daddy or whatever, but how I thought I could get away with it, I don't know. And the fact that I can still remember it implies that probably they just left it there. But I remember getting fairly bollocked for that. Also, I remember there was I remember drawing the Starship Enterprise on the back of a insurance folder that Dad had. I don't know what happened with that, but obviously he never looked at the back. Much to my backside's delight, because he would hit. One of these dads that would hit, not facially or anything. He had very much a public school kind of pull your trousers down, boy. He was that kind of old-fashioned dad. But yes, surfaces. Yeah. Sorry, have you finished with surfaces or?
Yes, that's all I can think. I mean, I'm sure there are other things.
I must admit, this is a tough one, but I refuse to be stumped by it. I suppose that the first thing that springs to mind is work surfaces on kitchens. We've got not quite a nice work surface, but I think it's been on for some time, and basically wear and tear, it's starting to bulge and move, and I don't know how much longer it'll be. But they've always interested me. We had a breakfast where we used to live in Cleveland Flats. We had a breakfast table. I mean, because we had such a big kitchen at the big fridge at the time. I think we got a smaller one eventually whilst we were there, but you didn't really have the room to really kind of make it function as a dining table. Looking back, I suppose we should have boxed clever and done something a little brighter with it, but. It was a breakfast bar. I remember that had a particular surface on it. Surfaces wise, I've come over the years to favour tiles. I like tiles. Anything with tiles in it is okay by me, especially in the bathroom. In fact, I wish our floors were tiled. We've got this rather stained lino, and I would love for the landlady to say, I know what, let's do some tiles on it. Yes.
We got tiles in our bathroom on the floor as well, and it is quite easy. Whereas the lino we have in the kitchen looks pretty awful, and
that's right.
It's sort of frayed in places.
Carpet's even worse. I mean, we had carpet when we lived in St Martin's Church Street. We had carpet and you could not. It got filthy, and there was nothing you could really do. And it got wet, and there was nothing you could really do, and it was a bit of a mess. I can't remember with Cleveland Flats though. It was the surface. I really liked that loo. The surface is again lots of tiles around the bath and everything, and it was a nice loo. I don't know, everything was there, but. I always think, when I think of kitchens, I always think, my sister seems to have had all the luck with kitchen. I've always wanted a bigger kitchen. I don't know why, because I don't cook that much, but I really like bigger kitchens. We grew up with a small one. Kent Road was even smaller. I liked the Church Street one because you had a large work surface, and it opened out into the garden, and that was nice, and that was my favourite marital kitchen, and I still dream about it. It's just sad, isn't it? I suppose, the kitchen Devizes Road was the smallest, the squattiest of all, and the one at the moment, all right, but again, my sister's always had nice kitchens. With the nice, so she's got a gorgeous work surface. The other thing with kitchens is I always think of, in the 70s we had this catalogue. I don't know where it was from or what it was. It was some kind of a kitchen catalogue, and there was a picture of a kitchen with lots of appliances that were for sale in it. And I think it must have been shot around the time. It was a bizarre idea, but I've had this theory because it was dark. It was like it was all dark. It was like like the set of a thriller or something. And I thought, well, maybe because we're talking about sort of 73, 74. Maybe there was that period was bedevilled with power cuts. So maybe it was a power cut there. But that's a bit of a tenuous link. But surfaces, yes, tiles. Anything cleanable in a bathroom is okay with me. As I say, your parents, you've got a really nice tiled floor, and it's just easier to keep clean. I did a real good clean of the flat today. But I did the bathroom with the new flash, the flash mop that they advertise on the telly at the moment, and it was fine, but the stains were still there, and you just couldn't get a really satisfying look to it. Yeah, I mean, maybe I mean, we've been in there 8 years. Maybe I'll grow a pair and say, actually, it would be okay if we tiled the floor. So I'm just looking for something on the floor that would be more cleanable. But no, surface is interesting. I suppose surfaces of planets as well. You think the moon or something, but surfaces of some personal stuff like skin is always interesting. Tattoos. Oh yes.
Which neither of us have.
No, I'm not anti-tattoo either. I would probably consider, were my skin not so sensitive, and it is sensitive, I would not rule out the possibility of having one. I know there's a young girl at work who's tattooed, and I said, yeah, actually your tattoos look really nice. Some people don't know when to stop with tattoos, but I actually think tattoos are and on women, dare I say, actually quite sexy.
I'm not anti them as such, but I wouldn't. I'm anti pain, so I wouldn't really want one myself.
I'm pretty anti pain myself.
I do remember. I do remember a boyfriend who became a boyfriend when I first met him, when he discovered I had no tattoos, saying, "Wow, it's almost like a novelty these days to find somebody who hasn't got a tattoo." So that was 10 years ago.
Also, I think with tattoos, I would, if I got something, it would have to be really, really good. The thing is, I'm someone who has been in love a few times. Now it's pointless getting people you love on your, unless they're sort of children or dead children or something, which I don't have, because you're always going to upset someone. I would need to get, if I got something, it would have to be really good. It was or something very special to me. I would think. So I wouldn't have my favourite Doctor Who monster or something, or a Doctor or something, but I would actually probably have a really nice piece of religious artwork, and it wouldn't have to be. It would have to be really good, and I'd sort of the Virgin Mary and Child or something like that, or a nice Christian picture. It would have to be something that meant something to me. For it to go on, it wouldn't be jokey or anything. It would have to be something really serious. But I think with this is going to reveal something I don't think I've ever told anyone before. But anybody who's studied me at all or been in my company probably is aware of it anyway. One of the favourite feels I've got of my own body is my earlobe. In fact, I would say I'm obsessed with my earlobe because I actually really, really like the feel, lumpy and smooth, and I've always liked the feel of the earlobe. It's not so much on other people, but on myself. I just and I always used to tuck my ear in. That's something I can't do now. But when I was a kid, I used to tuck my ear in, or fiddle with my ear, tuck my ear in. And you can see on my first school picture in 1973, there's even now. I think it was on Facebook. I'll probably put it on one of the social medias now. But you can actually see my ear is tucked in, and I used to do that all the time. I suck my fingers as well, not my thumb, my fingers. And I was absolutely fascinated when I went down to my cousin, my uncle and aunt's place for my aunt's funeral in 1980. I was absolutely fascinated to see that my cousin, who's 16 years older than me, was still sucking her fingers, which I was still doing up till about 81, where they said, you got book teeth, boy, you've got to have a brace, which I did, and that kind of nipped that in the bud. But I've always stayed loyal to my ear. I wouldn't be without it. But surfaces, sort of very evocative sometimes.
We should probably move on because we're coming to the end of the episode. But we're going to do something slightly different now for this last part of the episode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to generate 3 words, and you only have to speak about one of them. So you have to choose from those 3 which you'd like to speak most. We might return. I might say at the end what would you have had anything to say about the other two you didn't do? But we'll see how long it takes us. So let's do 3 words, and I'll read them out. Right. Right. This is. I wonder which one you'll go for. We have lover. We have test. We have metal detector. You should go first.
Oh my god! I wouldn't trust.
Lover,
I wouldn't trust myself with lover. I like talking about people I've loved. You would have to have a separate episode, an X-rated episode, not for the nervous. Ones I would have liked to have been, and ones I was. And
plenty of podcasts do that, but I've never been very. It made me wonder.
I'm going to discount that because I'd just be let off the leash, and I wouldn't trust what I'd say, and we'd probably go on for a couple of hours. Not because I'm sort of Latin lover, but it's I have loved in my time. Not necessarily. We're not talking necessarily about sex, but yeah. Anyway, so we got metal detector.
Test or metal detector.
Test or metal detector. Test. Well, I'm going to go for test. Mainly because with schools I used to hate tests, and I suppose spelling tests were okay because I was always keen to learn a new word. So, and various words like that still come back. So, yeah, even in infant school into senior school, you always had a word. You learned a word. I think the toughest one we ever had was anti-disestablishmentarianism, which, apart from being trundled out as a party trick of a long word, I've never heard used in common expression whatsoever. So I think that was a bit useless. I used to do quite good in spelling tests. And I used to get quite angry with myself if I wasn't doing spelling tests. Maths tests, not so much. I can't, apart from in infant school, I used to in order to remember numbers, I used to characterise them. So I had this fantasy of 5 getting married to 6. Was it 4? No, 4. 4 was the groom, 5 was the bride. And I saw 5 as a woman with a delighted mouth open, and 4 very rugged and dependable. And I did draw a picture of that, and that was. And I remember this little old lady that came to do sort of maths test, maths with us, and she did sort of, she was with us individually, and she sat with this girl, and I overheard her saying, "Well, the number 5 is a little man with a hat on," and I thought to myself, "No, it's a woman." I got very, very irate. I used to get quite a few bees in my bonnet when I was a kid, but yeah. So that was the only colourful experience I had with tests. Was that kind of way I was looking at maths. But then it all got very crummy, and sort of. I think when they realised I was no good at maths, they put me on the sets when nobody behaved themselves and the teacher didn't give a monkeys. English tests much better, and I don't test. Do I have any tests now? Oh, I suppose of course. These days we do the mandatory computer-based training for each year. We have to, and they're much better than the old crummy old videos we had to watch, and it was always after lunch at work, and you were kind of you used to keeping busy all the time, and having to sit and watch this agent video, which you've watched 73 million times before, you kind of start dropping off. But no, they're not too bad at the moment. But I don't like the questions that are very smug and sort of say, which of these did no, actually wrong. It's all of them, Or the multiple, and it's multiple choice. But it's not too bad these days. You can do it without too much hassle, and they give you a million chances as well. Sort of. No, you didn't get that. Try again. So you actually get a chance to Were my A levels that easy?
I guess I've done a lot. I've done a lot of tests or quizzes on the podcast in recent years. As for metal detectors, I mean, I'm not really sure. I have great stories, other than, as you say, the lover one. You start. Where do you stop?
Where do you stop? No, that's just too.
Yeah.
I mean, fantasies, realities, sex, no sex. Yeah, I could, and it wouldn't be fair to the people that were responsible, or my wife, come to that.
I mean, as for metal detectors, I've always had a sort of, a slightly romantic view of or the idea of how using a metal detector. I know it's kind of a bit of a geeky pastime, a bit up there with train spotting, but also quite exciting. And but I've never had the opportunity to use one. I mean, as I've said before, the house my parents live in is built on a village dump, and I know for years when they were, particularly up in the allotments, they'd be digging up old bottles, and but I think it was more glass and pottery, which wouldn't be something that
the metal detector would be very interested in. Yes,
interested in. Whether they did find metal things, I'm not sure. But
I suppose this is sort of jumping slightly on. The only thing I would mention about metal detectors is my Panto Sunset Wadden had it. It starts with the hero coming on with apparently a metal detector. And it turns out he wasn't able to afford one, and cobbled together some farmyard junk with a frog with a bad throat on, making the sound. So I thought that was a nice gag to start the show. But yeah, that was supposed to be a metal detector.
I did enjoy there was a TV show called The Detectorists, which was quite enjoyable.
Toby Jones.
Not so long. Yes. Yeah. But anyway, I think we have gone down some interesting paths this episode, and I think we'll be returning to this idea at a later date. I look
forward to it. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Nick, for sharing your stories. And thanks, listeners, for listening. And if you have any words that you want to suggest to us for us to talk about, then we can do that. Or if you want to record yourself talking about one of the words that we've talked about, or some other random word, then we'll be happy to play it on the show as well. So the email address to send it to is in the show notes. But okie dokie. Well, we'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Nick.
Pleasure.
And we'll speak to you all again soon. Bye bye for now. Bye bye. For the end of the episode, and I'm generating it now. China, and it's the words are always in lowercase, so we can talk about China, or we can talk about China.
Yeah. I'll kick us off if you like. But China very much brings me to mind of my grandparents, who used to collect China thing, the kind of pots that were China made in China, of Chinese things like in blue and white, that kind of thing. We used to have until recently. We had a teapot like that. We still our little pot of There's various things we've got that I think Jen likes it as well. But yes, I remember various pots and things which were very oriental. That my grandparents had, that quite evocative memories of. China. I mean, we've
Neither of us have ever been there.
no. I mean, I suppose I've been in Aladdin back in 1982, which was Chinatown, My Chinatown, which I later discovered, of course, was an Al Jolson song. And so I was I made up, dare I say it, in this day and age, was I made up to look Chinese? I think I was. So I was very politically incorrect, but yes, I think I probably was for the. It was a pantomime, and it was Rogers, bless him, and yes, I was a Chinese policeman. Technically, I was half a Chinese policeman because I went up for the Chinese policeman, or one of the Chinese policemen, and was pipped to the post by an old school friend. Yes, we're still on speaking terms. Claire, who then proceeded to go down with chickenpox. Duly, I was promoted to said Chinese policeman, to my delight, and Claire came back with chickenpox in tow, having sort of, I think she still had the scars or something, but she wanted the part back, and there was a bit of foot stomping on both sides, and she and I, we were basically, poor old Roger was. You remember Roger? He was a sweetheart. He'd pop it, and he hated confrontation. He hated letting people down or whatever. And I remember him sort of saying, "Oh, we'll get you sorted out." And the solution we came up with is we did alternative nights. So she was this guy one night, and I was chorus, and then I was him the other night, and she was chorus. And fortunately, I was policeman when the press arrived. So there is the official photograph of Aladdin from 1982 has me as the policeman and not her. But too bad, too sad. Yeah. So that was my other encounter in China. But it's a very politically incorrect Aladdin, and also sticking with Aladdin as a broad brush, but. Aladdin was probably the first pantomime I saw, but because it was done at about 72 or 3 by St Edmunds, which was the school my sister went to, and it was done as a story rather than a pantomime, I seem to remember, because it was quite serious, because I think it was quite dark, because Widow Twankey only had 5 days to pay something and she'd be executed. I thought I definitely don't remember it being a jokey pantomime one, but not that pantos can be a bit dark, but I was I just definitely remember that first Aladdin that I saw at St Edmunds being very different to the later ones, and my experience as half a policeman. I
gotta go now. Bye. Gotta go. Bye.
Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.
This show is part of the Pride 48 network. Find more shows over at pride48.com.
That Paul, he's a great guy.
I have a voice.
I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice.
We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UnivazPods.net.
My thoughts on China would be, to start with, a little bit like yours, in that my parents have a lot of, whether it is strictly speaking China, it's certainly like wall tiles and stuff that they collected on sort of overseas trips.
Oh yes, I know the ones. Yeah.
But so whether that counts as China, I'm not sure. But I think though the thing that I most associate with China, and I presume this is correct, is that as a boy I was always very, and I still have a soft spot for them. I was very keen on pandas when I was growing up,
oh, right.
and I had a lot of panda toys, and I remember to the point of liking pandas that I remember that there was and this would have been when I was probably older than I should have been for collecting soft toys, but there used to be a fair down in the village next to my parents' village.
Was it a cuckoo fair?
They had the cuckoo fair, yeah. And I remember I used to walk across the fields from my parents' village, and I remember seeing a panda and really wanting it but not having enough money with me, and I walked all the way back again to get the money, and then all the way back again, and then I at least I presume I did. I mean, that's quite a long way to have done that home, back again, and then home again, unless I was dropped off or picked up. Or it was a different day, you know. I just presumed the bear would still be there the next day, and I went back the next day with. But
was he still there?
Yeah, I have. I think we still have him, and yes, I did get him.
And when he got there, the bear was in the cupboard rather than the cupboard was bare.
That's fair, yeah. So yeah, I don't know what it was. I mean, I saw a panda in Vienna Zoo, and. I think it brought me to tears slightly, just because it's so cute, and it's so. Even though animal captivity has its pros and cons, it is. You certainly feel very privileged to see some of these animals you do see in these situations.
Yeah.
It's a bigger picture, but the fact is that the animals are here, and there's nothing I can do about them being there or not. But it's certainly a privilege to see them so close up.
The other thing, one more thing I think about China is my friend. Well, round about my teenage, Otto Conliffe actually went to live in China. They got married a Chinese lady, so he went to live in China. I presume he's still there, because I know, obviously, with COVID and everything, it's been not too easy. But I think he went to live in China.
You know what I'd really like to do is get some of that hair off him, and then knit a sweater, a Yeti hair sweater. Do you think he'd mind? I don't know. You know what I wonder? What in the world size shoe do you think the Shy Yeti wears? I don't know. I just wonder.
They've gone.